But what we've done so far is we've talked a lot about where we think you should be, and now we're going to talk about financial sustainability. And for us, what we're going to talk about is projectable income. Okay? So, before we get into that, I'm going to ask a question. Is there anyone here who's been involved in running a business before? Two at the back, three, yep. Anyone else involved in running a business?
The sports club could be classed as a business.
Oh, I do like you as well. Okay, let's talk through what a business is. We run a business, we run a partnership. What we have to do is sit down and we have to have customers who generate revenue, income. As part of that, we also have a situation where, as a business, we have expenses that go out. Ideally, what we need to do is to make sure that the income is sufficient to cover the expenses. And hopefully there's enough left over to pay us. As a partnership, if we get that wrong, and that the income is less than the expenses, and we've still got to spend it, then actually there's a shortfall. And legally, as a partnership, it's up to us to then personally put the money in. That's the downside of a partnership. Limited companies are different, but as a partnership, that's how it works. Without knowing anything about your clubs, and we can talk about structures in a little bit while, about whether you're a charity or whatever else, but can we just bounce that little concept around? How many of you actually generate revenue? How many of you actually get money coming in? Put your hand up if your club gets money coming in. If there's anyone in this room who doesn't put their hand up, then you've really got problems. Okay. Do any of your clubs actually have expenses? Do you actually have to ever spend any money? Yep, oh, you all do that as well. That's handy. What happens if you don't bring in enough to pay all the money that has to go out?
Won't be here.
Okay.
The bank balance reduces.
The bank balance reduces. You can keep it going for a while.
Yeah.
But if you reach the point now actually where you can't pay your bills, what happens?
You go stop.
Thank you very much indeed. Just as the partners are responsible, the committee's responsible. Now that depends on charities and there's other ways, we can talk about that in a minute. Although I'll put my hand up and say, we're not accountants. And if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of, should we be a charity? Should we be talking to Oscar about that? There are other people who are better to have that conversation. We can talk about it generally, but not the very details, because oh, there's a smile there. You've gone down that road as well.
I work for a charity.
Do you?
Day job.
Oh, I feel like I work for a charity some days. Okay, so what I've described is our business.
That's where you refer to your partner.
Well, I've said I do a lot of stuff with people with special needs.
Exempt from tax then?
Sorry?
The end of a beautiful relationship.
Are we exempt from tax? Nobody's exempt from tax.
Charities are.
Now, you might think you are.
You're not.
No, you're not. Okay. So what I've described is our business. But funnily enough, all the things that relate to our business seem to relate to your clubs. So if I was to ask you that question, how many of you are involved in running a business? How many of you would put your hand up now?
Everybody.
Yeah, you should do. You may not view yourself as someone running a business, but if you've got 400 members, you've got 400 customers who are looking at you to do things that they want to spend their money on. If you have 25 members, you have 25 customers who are coming to you and giving you money because they want you to do something of value to them. Now, it's a fundamental thing we ask sports clubs to understand. And it goes right back to your comment about when I said, for doing this, and you said, if you're a business, you are a business. You have all the same issues a business faces. You just don't call yourself a business. But the fact is, you have to run it as a business. And therefore, there are two fundamental things you have to be able to do. One, predict your income. And two, know your expenditure. And your income needs to be more than your expenditure. You might be able to run for a short period of time by using up reserves, but the fact of the matter is, that pathway only leads to complete disaster. So you actually have to sit down and say, we know what we're getting in. I know exactly what Kinrusher Cricket Club will generate annually from predictable income. Not grants, not anything else, but from the things we do, I know what we will bring in. And I also know exactly what all our costs are. And what we generally sit down and do is say, how do we make sure that income is more than outgoings? And what we're going to talk about now is the things that we put in place to make sure that happens. Is that a concept that you've thought of before? Some of you have. There's nodding heads in some places. There's kind of grudging nodding heads, and some folk are going, I missed EastEnders for this. Okay, so we're going to talk about this concept. And we're going to talk about practical things that you might be able to use to start generating predictable income. Particularly, the challenge that Mark gave us was £8,000 to £10,000 a year. Is that a reasonable figure?
Over and above what we already do.
Over and above?
Kind of just, the context around 8 to 10 was around the Club Together programme. If Club Together disappeared tomorrow, there's 8 to 10 grand to find. That was the kind of concept, the original discussion we had. That's why I came up with that figure, by the way. It wasn't just plucked out of there.
Yeah. So this isn't, okay, that's what you need for your running costs.
Yeah.
You've got your running costs. This is actually a programme you want to implement over and above. So when you sit down and do that, I know what it costs us to run the club. That's looking at all the things that we want to do. So for a cricket club, the biggest expense by far is maintaining the ground. Now, at Kinross House, we were very, very fortunate because actually the estate cut it because they wanted the grass a certain way and they wanted to do all sorts of stuff, and we were very fortunate. The move to a new one, I had to sit the committee down and said, righty ho, chaps, here's the realities of life. We need to find an additional £12,000 to £15,000 a year to maintain our own ground. 2 of them nearly fell off the chair. Oh, we can't do that. That's not money we've ever had to find before. How are we going to do that? We sat and said, well, there's lots of ways we can do it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to float some ideas around. We're going to ask you as well to get involved in ways that you can do it. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, you're running a business and you've just identified after a board meeting you need to come up with an extra 8 grand a year. What are you going to do?
Run an event.
Run an event. Right, Anne, get the pen, this is good. No, you can write, it'll take too long.
Establish a fund.
Oh, hang on. We've got an event, right, okay.
Event funding group.
Oh, hang on.
Clarify to do with the event, that's obviously like a race.
Right, okay, well, I'll just call it events at the moment. Let's not be too specific, let's just work on that. Okay, so we're going to run an event.
Establish a subgroup for funding.
Okay, so we're going to look at fundraisers.
If you were a business and you had a board meeting, the first thing you would look at your overheads.
Okay.
You'd cut your overheads.
Yeah. Well, you'd look at your overheads anyway.
Yeah, look at them, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to look at our overheads.
Increase charges.
Sorry?
Increase your charges.
Okay.
I'm loving it.
Cut the charges.
Okay, hang on, we've got 2 interesting viewpoints here. Okay, one person is saying increase your charges, another person is saying cut your charges.
Establish a business plan.
Oh, hang on, let's answer running out of pens.
Depends what they're at the first place.
Sorry?
It depends what they're at the first place and how many members.
Oh, hang on, let's not get into the specifics. All I want to do at the moment is fire off some ideas. Oh, I've no doubt at all we're about to get into fisticuffs. That's part of the fun.
Increase your membership. Increase your membership.
Okay, so memberships, overheads, fundraisers, events. Sorry. Apply for funding, okay. There was another point. A business plan. Yeah, that goes back to here, set your goals.
Sponsorships.
Back in.
Okay,
All comes back to planning.
planning's quite a nice one, I like that. I'm a big fan of planning. Good run a project management company, I suppose. Okay, we've got a few things there. Right, in the space of less than a minute, you all fired in ideas. Have any of you got experience of running an event?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Have any of you appointed a subcommittee of fundraisers?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's good. We've got some experience there. Has anyone ever looked at their overheads?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Constant.
Okay, that's good. Memberships.
Yeah.
You all have experience of looking at memberships and sitting there saying, oh, do we put subs up, do we take them down, do we do whatever? Good, we're going to talk about that. Funding, applying for funding. Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. And sponsorship. Which one do you want to tackle first?
Can I just come back to tell me you said projectable income? Some of these are not projectable.
Oh, thank you. The things I would look at there that are projectable income. Events can be, if you've run them before. You've got a reference point, you know where you're going. So, yep, that's definitely projectable. Fundraisers, having a committee doesn't actually generate any money, but you need to have it in place. But it doesn't actually produce any. Overheads, yep, you can pretty well predict your overheads and you can predict savings. Membership, is that predictable?
Yeah.
Yep. Fundraising and applying for funding, is that a predictable income stream?
No.
Yes, it can be.
Yeah, normally no.
No.
Depending on the structure, but yeah, on the whole, you don't make the decision. And what I'm looking at here is I want you to be able to control it. You don't make the decision on that. That can actually be a third party makes the decision to say, actually, that funding's scrapped.
Funding can be dangerous too because they can impose conditions on you
Yeah.
that you may not want.
So what I'd like to do is to say that funding is not one of the ones we're looking at. So applying for grants, applying for things like that, I never view that as predictable income. That's top up for capital projects. We managed to get £2,500 from the Kinross Fund because we needed temporary toilets. Fantastic, that was great. They had the money, they liked the sound of the project and they gave us it. If they didn't give us it, guess what? We didn't have temporary toilets. Sponsorship. Anyone successful at raising sponsorship?
Yeah.
You're probably the most popular man in Scotland at the moment then, because I know hundreds of people who want to talk to you. Okay, we can all raise bits of sponsorship, but again I view sponsorship as predictable to a point. So the ones I want to look at are the ones that you can actually control and generate revenue from on an ongoing annual basis, because what you've got to do now is we've got to come up with an extra £8,000 to £10,000 a year. So let's talk about events. Where was the lady that said events and running a race? You want to tell us about your experience on that?
What do you want to know? I suppose our club put on 2 races. One is we generate income from, which helps with any shortfalls that we've got.
Okay. What sort of income and what sort of numbers?
Do I need to say this here?
No. Okay. Well, let's.
I know, I'm only kidding on.
Yeah.
As in, well, I suppose our race that we had in March, we maybe had like 170 runners. But I mean, what you've also got is, I shouldn't really be talking about numbers here, should I really?
All right. Let's not talk specifics.
No, but I mean, I know there's a list of the expenditure that we've got, and a lot of the expenditure we incur in the day, basically, because we're planning the event. So, to do with getting people in, we obviously we market it, but we probably don't market it as well as we should. So we know we could maybe do better than that. But we have online entry, so we've got pre-entry to the race. And we generate income through that.
All right.
So that helps to pay for any costs that you're incurring before the race as well as after the race, as well as you can on the day of the race.
Okay. Let's not be specific then about the detail of that. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Run
we
events.
find that easy. Our club put on about 20 races a year.
Right, okay.
We're fortunate we have people who love doing it.
Right, okay.
Some of them are one of them's pre-entry and we make a lot of money out of that because it's so popular it would be oversubscribed beyond what the ground could manage. Other races are smaller and make a small amount of money.
Okay. Let me give you an example of an event that's run in Kinross. Any of you here involved in cycling?
Yeah.
Yep. Do you know the Sportive? Okay. Kinross Cycling Club set up about 4 or 5 years ago as a local cycling club, just for local people, but they decided they would run an event. And what they decided to do was to actually run a road race. But it can be participative, and you just get involved, but there's actually a race to it. And I think there's 2 different sizes, there's 500 million miles and 30 miles anyway. And they do this. Okay, local wee club, that's what they do. It's the only fundraising they do a year. Last year they took in £29,000 on the day of that race.
It's expensive.
Sorry? It's because it's expensive. I don't know how much it costs. Because it's expensive. The fact is, every single year they're oversubscribed and people want to run it. They simply looked at it and said, we can run a very good quality event that actually people from all over the UK want to get involved in. It's now one of the major sporting events in less than 3 years in Kinross. What do they do with the money? The bulk of it they give to charity. They keep a small amount to maintain the club. They gave a cheque for a couple of £1,000 last week to Portmore Primary School, or Milnathorpe Primary School. They gave about £8,000 to Chaz. And actually the people who run it look at it and say it sustains the club and fantastic, but we actually make so much more money, we'll just put that into the local community. One event, yes there's lots of organising, yes they have costs. And they did a business plan and they took some decisions and said the first time we do this, it's going to cost us money. But the second time we do it, we'll keep the money back to pay for it while we're doing it. But they raised an awful lot of money in one day of running that event. And all they did was they actually found several people who wanted to get involved, and you said you've got people who really like doing it. Events are phenomenal. What we're going to do as a cricket club, we do a number of events. And the reason we do them is they're extremely predictable income. We do a Christmas party. Anyone else do a Christmas party for the members? Put your hand up if you do a Christmas party. We do a Christmas party. We do a Christmas party every single year, and we make £1,700 on the night. And we sell tickets through the club. 50% of the people that come in have nothing to do with the cricket club at all. Costs us about £150 to book the venue. A little bit more if we want to book a band or a disco or whatever else, but actually we've got people that fancy themselves as DJs and things like that, and they come up and do it. And actually the party itself is just simply, everyone gets together, the parents come along because there's a bar, and it's mainly teenagers. And actually they don't dance, they don't do anything else, they just hang around. We've run it now for 4 years, we've never made less than 1,500, and the most we made is 2,000. We know every year it's there. And that is our banking money. We just say there's £1,700 a year. And do you know the biggest fundraiser on that night is the Macallan Challenge? Have you ever heard of that? Shoving the coin. What you do is you get a ball of Macallan, you've got the dance floor, you stick the ball of Macallan down, you put a line where the carpet is, and you say it's £1 to go, and you walk up and you fire a coin in. Nearest to the bottle wins. And we run it for 10 minutes. Last year we did £190 in 10 minutes on the Macallan Challenge. We time it perfectly. The parents have now been in for an hour and a half. The dads have been knocking it back. They're not completely gone because we chuck them out then, but they're well enough there that they want to show everyone how great they are. And it runs quite nicely for about 5 minutes, and then the hardcore guys come in. There are 5 guys who every year want to win it. One guy just comes up and his pockets are completely filled with coins, and he just goes boom, boom, boom and fires them in. And we take in £1,700 every time we run that. That for us is predictable income. And we just have 3 people in the club whose job is to organise a Christmas party. So if you don't run a Christmas party, we have got 100 kids and their parents as members. So we're not a massive club. It's good enough. But what we say is the tickets are £5 a head and the teenagers come in. There's no drinking policy for the teenagers. It's done in a hotel. It's all properly managed. We have marshals there to make sure they don't run off and all that. And there are some costs, but actually we just make a profit every year. £1,700. Who said bagpacking? Do bagpacking? Yeah, bagpacking's a great one. And again, we have people who want to do that. Bagpacking for us is £600 a year. That's pretty much what we get in when we do bagpacking. Sometimes it's 4.
2,000.
2,000, yeah, depending on when you get it.
John, ask the man with the top if he'll share how much he made this year.
We made £5,000.
Oh, lovely.
Lovely. The Christmas period, you've got the bagpacking.
Yeah.
How long in advance did you have to book that?
Well, we've got a parent in the club who works at Tesco's.
Oh, okay. So it's that.
They normally say
Where do you need some
book
help?
in January for December.
Yeah.
I just say it's questionable because he lives in Dundee, but we'll not hold that. Sorry, Scott.
Don't agree with that.
I don't know.
No. Okay, let's look at the detail again on this one. So you start to get things that if you've not done them before, £5,000 just before Christmas, excellent result. That might have been a one-off. It'd be interesting to see if you did it again this year and got £5,000. You can then start to turn around and say bagpacking is 4 to 5 grand that comes in. It starts to become predictable income. Often people view events as a one-off, we'll do it once and never again. We actually view it entirely differently. We have structured things that we do throughout the year. The big one for this year, because we're going to move the Christmas party a wee bit, and we're slotting in another one. We're doing a panto.
Oh no, you're not.
Oh yes, we are.
Well, we'll be on stage, whether it's a panto or not, it's another matter.
I just say, sorry, that is a bagpack as well bringing income. What I found is it exposes the club to the public.
Yeah.
You know, particularly youngsters who we cloistered the bagpacking.
Yeah.
And when you get the public talking to you face to face, and you tell the public what you do for the kids. Old people love you helping the kids. Sunday, yeah, there's a tenner. That really impresses.
Yeah, it does. Especially in their kit and stuff like that. And they're there helping.
We found because then it's being spent on the kids as well.
Yeah.
So taking to Gothenburg, that's really helped doing the backpack.
Exposure that to the backpack. Income's a bonus. Exposure that like the backpack.
And that's the thing that these events give you. It also gives you exposure. That we talked about the cricket club with the Christmas party. The fact half of those people that turn up are not official members of the club. And everything that we do, it all comes back. This is where we kind of went through those 5 steps at the start. It all ties back into who we are. We're a family club. A family-orientated event is what we're going to look to run. And we're going to set our goals and create the plan, and we work through it. You've already identified perhaps we could have marketed it slightly better. So maybe for you in there, where do you need some help? Maybe you need some help, and I'm not saying you do, but maybe that's something to look at the marketing side of it. Go out and ask people in your club, and then just do it. Give it a go.
What else are you going to do that you're backpacking?
Promote volunteer flyers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Recruit volunteers.
Yeah.
too.
We have our membership secretary in a wheelchair. He volunteers to be at the entrance to the store with the flyers, and people come and see him in the flyer, and that's very powerful.
Yeah.
You're in the running club. I'm in the running club. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not what they expect. The panto for us is an interesting one, and I would hugely encourage you to think about this. It's a bit off the ball, and what's that got to do with cricket? Absolutely nothing. Nothing whatsoever. Most of what we do has nothing to do with cricket. But actually, what convinced us was one of the people in our club who plays in the women's team. She's decided now she doesn't want to play anymore, but she still wants to be active in the club. And we're chatting away, and she said, I don't have a lot of time, and we got chatting to her. And we said, what can we do? She said, well, unless you ever want to do a theatre or something like that, because I'm really, really into the theatre. And we said, I think that's a bit highbrow for us, unless it was a panto. She said, yeah, you could do a panto. And we started chatting, we said, we could do a panto. Is there any money in that? She said, I don't know. She says, the venue in Kinross will take 300 people. You can probably do it two nights in a week and charge them a tenner a head. I went, that's £6,000. What would it cost to run a panto? She said, probably about £1,000. I mean, you're leaving us, and he thought, £5,000 for 2 nights of a panto. And actually, Aunt and I's the Ugly Sisters, this could be huge fun. This could actually just be more fun than playing cricket. So we've now started to do the work. But again, what we did was we spoke within the club and said, is there anyone else that knows about this? And all of a sudden, lots of folks said, oh yeah, I've done amateur dramatics. I'd love to be involved in this. These are not the cricketers. These are the other people who have come up. So from our point of view, bagpacking, the Christmas party and the panto, between them, easily bring in, for us, what now could be £7,000 a year. And they're not cricket related. Nothing to do with cricket. But then we've got another one for the summer that our treasurer came up with, and we were chatting to him, and generally it's this idea of firing around. I don't know anything about this, but he runs triathlons. That's kind of your side of the fence, isn't it?
No.
Not really.
You don't have anything to do with that.
No. Well, he turned around and said, why don't we host a triathlon? He said, we've got the cricket ground. It's at Lochleven, it's a good venue. We could host a triathlon. And again, we said, we know nothing about triathlons. He said, no, but I do. I'd run them. I'm involved in them. I'm in a triathlon club. He said, I think we could get 50 folk to come in and pay £50 a head to run an event. Again, I was going to go £2,500. How much will it cost to set up? He said, oh, once you got the basic things, get some insurance, maybe a couple of grand, but we could probably clear £3,000 doing it. And I'm sitting there saying, fantastic. Is that what we can do? He says, well, that would be the starter. If we can really market it, we get 200. I started thinking, oh, wow, £10,000 for running an event. He says, oh, we need to get better at it, and we just try the small ones. And what we're trying to do here is to say that often people sit down and think events. They don't become creative. They think, oh, well, we're an athletics club. One of the best ones we ever did, and tell them about the Olympics.
Oh, we ran in the Olympics. Basically a whole bunch of really kind of silly games. Crazy feet. Everybody seen big planks of wood with rubber straps around them? You've all got to march off and that. Yep, we did those. We had the women's team absolutely destroyed everybody on that. They were just complete control. They knew what they were doing. The rest of us were lying on the ground. We did that. We had some
wrong arm throws.
Up and over wrong arm throws. All things, nothing to do with cricket, but just fun activities. And I don't think we do one event that's cricket. In the past, we haven't done one event that's been specific to our sport. Part of that comes down to what you said, it's about bringing new people in. We do the Community Sixes every year, which opens it up to community clubs and community teams. We're getting guys from the hockey club coming and playing cricket now because of that. I've gone to play hockey. The clubs are starting to talk to each other. And part of it as well, I think it's about identifying, there is no pantomime in the Kinross area. So it's not as if we're competing with somebody else. So is that something that you can pick on? You know, the triathlon, I don't believe there's a triathlon in our area either. So again, that's something that's unique to us. So finding an event that's non-athletic, that's going to attract people in, and you've got potentially a much bigger audience, because the athletes in your club, unless you bring them in from outside, they're probably paying enough money throughout the year as it is. in membership and in entrance fees and in all of those other things that come with being a member and a performing member, an active member of a club. So maybe trying to identify some, what I would class almost as the passive side of what we do. It's got nothing to do with it, whether it's the bag packing, whether it's a pantomime, a Christmas party, whatever it is, as a fundraiser. We also do a fun run or a fun waddle, 5k-ish, round the ground.
That's with kids. I don't do that. I'm a marshal, or
Yeah.
I would do it.
And the kids do it. We do it every 2 years. If you do these things year after year, they become stale. And people go, not that again. I've got to raise. How many times do you get somebody coming around, knocking the door, or a friend or somebody going, I'm doing this, will you sponsor me? You get kind of fed up with sponsorships. Businesses are no different. We go and knock on the door, says, you fancy sponsoring us? We're looking to get new cutting machines for our fantastic outfield, which we need to buy. They're going to cost us about £15,000 to get, and that's just looking at a wee quad with a set of gang lures in the back and a roller and a sprayer and all the stuff we need. Who's going to give a little rural cricket club £15,000 in sponsorship? But we found a better way of doing it.
And it'll actually tie into the overheads. So, yep.
Oh, sorry, I think you're going to ask me.
No. I'm going to tie into the question about the overheads and reviewing the overheads and cut the overheads. I've never been a fan of cutting overheads unless you absolutely have to. But I'm a big fan of swapping overheads. And what I do there is I take the overheads I've got and give them to someone else. And what we'll talk about on that one is one of the first things we identified was we've now got £12,000 a year of cost that we didn't have before in running the ground. So in terms of our expenditure and our overheads, it's just gone up by £12,000. Add to that, as Ant said, we're going to have to actually go out and buy a 5 or 7 gang mower to cut the grass, which has to be cut every week, and a tractor or a quad bike that can tow it behind, and then find folk who want to go in and do it. So actually we start looking at that, bearing in mind I've just said we're moving to new ground, it's going to be great. So we need to come up with about £20,000 of capital cost before we built the pavilion and anything else, and then £12,000 a year of new overhead. But what I did was I sat down and looked at it in an entirely different way. And it relates back to a thing that we like to talk about in business, when we're talking to businesses, about value. And what I looked at was to try and establish the value of us moving to this new ground. This will come into facilities. I would imagine most of you don't own your own facilities. We don't own our facility. We actually just use someone else's land. We sat down and we had a discussion about value. And about what was the value of us going to this new ground. The chap who owns the land owns Lochleven's Larder, which is a big restaurant and shop. Don't know if anyone's been there. You have? Well, our cricket ground's right at the back. Come and visit. Please do. Do you play?
On my bike.
Oh, even better. I sat down and looked at this, and I had a chat with the farmer, and I said, look, this is fantastic, us coming here, but we've got some operational overheads we're going to have to address here. But what I have been thinking about is, you know, what's your thought on what the things we can bring to this area and the number of people we're going to bring up? We've got 100 kids coming up, they come up with their parents. Will they be able to make use of the restaurant and stuff like that? He says, oh, I hope so. As soon as he said that, I'm on a different bit. I says, oh, really? Yeah, so you don't mind all that? No, not at all. I want more coming in. More coming in, the better. I said, well, why is that? He said, well, 2 reasons. One, I want the revenue, because it will boost what we're doing. But secondly, I want to increase the profile of us being here. And I said, well, that's terrific. We want to do that as well, because we'd like to run a whole lot of events. We want to run the Community Sixes and get more people in. And we want to run lots of junior things. And the more I talked about it, in my head is the value. What I'm trying to identify is what is the value of us being there for him. And very quickly, he was getting very enthusiastic about all the things he wanted us to do. So then I sat down with him, and this is when I do overhead swaps. And I said, Rob, this is absolutely fantastic. Biggest problem I've got about coming here is actually, it's going to be really difficult for us to go out and buy the mowers and everything else to cut the grass. Maybe you could help us with that, because you're a farmer and you know where you can get these things. And he said, well, what is it you need? I said, well, we'll probably need some sort of tractory thing. He said, oh, I've got tractors. I said, well, that's great. We need a 7 gang or a 5 gang mower. He says, oh yeah, I know guys that can do that. I said, well, how much are they going to be? He says, I don't know, I'll go and find out for you. I said, that'd be fantastic. Because the other thing we've got to do, Rob, is I'm going to have to get a groundsman who's going to come cut all this stuff. He says, oh no, I've got guys. In the space of about 15 minutes, he'd now started to realise the value of us being there and bringing hundreds of people, extra people every week to his venue. And bringing all these things in. The net result was, we reached an agreement that he said, I'll tell you what, if you pay me 50 quid a week that you're there, I'll cut the grass, I'll buy the mowers, and I'll buy the tractor for you. Because it actually works better for me, because I can actually get my guys who, when the weather's fine, we go out and do stuff. When the weather's not great and we can't actually bring in the harvest, I need to give them something to do. So actually cutting your grass means they're not sitting around being a pain for me. And I said, what, so how much would that be? Because at a 20-week season, £1,000. He says, I'll tell you what's the deal, £1,000. I've just gone from a £20,000 capital expenditure I didn't know how to do, and £12,000 a year, to actually it's going to cost us £1,000, which is predictable. Now, that's not because I'm particularly smart. It's simply because I look at overheads and say, who can I get who will value us being there more and get them to pay for it? And a lot of what we do is work in partnership with people, where what we're able to do is understand the principle of value. And often, clubs and small businesses don't understand the value that you bring. How many of you use local authority facilities? All of you, pretty much. What value do you give them?
Hiring the facility.
Hiring the facility.
Something for the community.
Something for the community.
Coaching resource for free.
Because people are using the facilities that they've built up.
Okay.
People using their cafe.
Using their cafe. Okay. What I want you to do is to not think in those terms. What I want you to do is now convert that into a value proposition. Convert that into money. How much do you spend in their facilities? How much do your members spend in their facilities? If you've got 400 members that use a facility all the time and pay for it, what would happen if you weren't there?
No, obviously.
They'd lose the money.
You have a drop in income for the facility.
Yeah, drop in income for the facility. All too often, clubs think that they are the whipping dog of the local authority. Well, we can't say anything. Yes, you can. The local authority have things they need you to provide. And actually, people don't understand that value. I'll give you an example of a local authority. I've talked about disability cricket. What we have in Perth and Kinross, we wanted to try and get disability cricket going. Ant and I did a training course and we thought this is fantastic. We love the whole concept of actually people who haven't got the opportunity to do sport getting back involved in it. It was a wonderful opportunity and we sat down and said, we need to do this. But how are we going to do it? We've no money, there's no funds available for it. But again, because we shared our ideas, just with anyone I could talk to that I thought might be sensible, I got speaking to someone from Housing and Community Care in Perth and Kinross Council. And chatted to them and I said, we want to do disability cricket, blah, 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 I want to do this, we're doing that. They said, oh, we do a lot of work with people with learning disabilities. Oh, well, how does that work? Oh, they come from the college and we have to provide courses for them and education and life experiences. And I said, oh, well, we could help with that. And they said, that'd be fantastic, what sort of things can you do? And we said, well, we'll get them involved in cricket and get them part of a team and do training and sport, and we could do it every week. And we've got coaches now that know what they're doing and we can get involved in that. But we haven't got any money. And they said, no, that's okay, we've got a budget. And I said, well, what sort of budget have you got? They said, well, we've got an ongoing budget that would actually help to pay for some of the coaches. But interestingly enough, we've had an underspend in one of our other budgets, and I've got £30,000 to spend. And I said, well, how does that work? And they said, well, I need to spend it. And what you're talking about is really exciting. The net result was, we had a conversation, we couldn't do it all through cricket, but the net result was we set up a project, or a project was set up, I don't want to take credit for it because that would be wrong, but a project was set up in Perth and Kinross Council between football, rugby, tennis and cricket. That those four sports collaborated together, funded by the council, to actually provide disability coaching and disability facilities for those four sports. The only one that's still going is cricket. And it was fully funded by the council because we shared our plans with them and we swapped the overhead to someone else who could fund it. To the extent that the council have now come back and said, this is fantastic, we want to continue this, and are funding the whole trip down to Manchester in conjunction with a few other people that are doing it. And it's raised the profile. And the councillors loved it. They all came in and said, this is fantastic, we want to get involved. And the value to them, substantially more than the £30,000 that they spent on that project and the running costs. Never underestimate the value of a councillor getting their picture in the paper. Now we're all laughing, but actually equate that to money. We do a lot of work with the public sector. What I can tell you is, national governing bodies here, public money, better not be careful what we're saying here. The public sector and the people in there have an entirely different view of money, because it's not their money, it's a budget. And I learned a long time ago when we were doing work trying to do cost saving work with a public sector body, and we said we can save you £40,000 a year on this, and the financial director of the public authority said, no you can't. I said, I can, there's the figures. He said, no, you misunderstand the point. You can't save me anything. It just means I can use that money in a different budget. I can reallocate. And they're doing these things all the time, and you need to become adept at talking to them and understanding that you bring value. Because yes, you've got people coming through the door. You're using their facilities and bringing it in. How many of you talked to the education department about what you're doing? Yep. How many of you don't talk to education? How many of you are not involved with active schools? No?
About a head section.
Sorry?
We don't have a head section.
Okay. Those of you that have kids sections, active schools in Perth and Ross now fund 2 coaches for cricket alone, because we actually were able to work with them and deliver what they wanted, the value they needed, which was actually to develop a sport that met the Curriculum for Excellence programme. The development group helped develop it, we took it back in, they're now funding 2 coaches, and they swap the overhead. Those are ideas that are in there. Memberships, let's talk about membership.
John, sorry, just before you go on that, John, can I give a kind of athletic example we've come across recently? A club were trying to purchase, came to us saying they were going to purchase a photo finish, equipment, and could we help them with it in terms of applications and all the rest of it, because the Leisure Trust had refused to help them at the stadium they were training out of, their hub, sorry. And again, we had a very similar conversation. I'm not going to name the club because they're not in the room, so it would be unfair to do that. We had a conversation and said, well, have you spoken to them about the value your club brings? Very similar to what you mentioned 5 minutes ago around putting a value on your club. And it's not direct income into the club, it's expenditure that their athletes, which they don't see because it's paid straight into the trust as they come through the turnstile to use the stadium. And it turned out it was over £100,000 a year. Subsequently, the regional manager, who's in the room, but I'm not going to point them out, had a conversation with Leisure Trust and the club together to point this out, and now the Leisure Trust are actively working alongside the club and ourselves to find money for that photo finish.
You've got to
it's
understand
things like
value.
that, it's putting that value on it, and I think it was a very real example in athletics of something we're doing there. So.
What you're doing is very, very valuable in a number of different ways. Those of you with junior sections, you're not just providing childcare to the parents. You're actually providing a sports outlet, an opportunity to change lives. And there are people like the police, when we spoke about that, who actively want to participate with you and have money. And they have ongoing money. This is not grant. This is not, yeah, we'll give you 500 quid. This is, what we'd like to do is develop a 5-year programme where we're going to do this ongoing and you're going to support it, and it's going to be done through the club. But what we need is, we need financial support. You need to help us cover this. We need £10,000 a year. And what you suddenly find is these people say, fine, yeah, we'd like to be involved in that. Yeah, we've got criteria. Yes, there's things we want you to be able to do. We're going to give you the deliverables we want, but if you can do that, we'll give you the money. And you start to find your overhead swap round, and you can do that.
And that's fed into our membership. We're getting more and more juniors coming through now because this has come in. So it helps to make our memberships be more sustainable. Now, we've talked a lot about juniors. Somebody over here said that they're trying to get more older age range of people involved. Yeah. I don't know what anybody else's experience in the room is, but when I go to a gym, seeing the 20-year-old in spandex beside me doing all the things that they can do doesn't necessarily make me feel that I want to stay there very much longer, because it's not really my body shape or style or all these different things. Having the ability to offer something that's specific to help me, which is a bunch of guys like us that are all the same, in the same situation, we're going to turn up in tatty shorts and trainers and a t-shirt to run around, will mean that I'm more likely to join. Means that I'm more likely to be part of that group. There's more membership potential. So I think the fact that you're looking at targeting an older age range is fantastic. Are you anywhere near Kinross?
No, we stand in Glasgow.
Okay.
If we look at memberships, I'm conscious of watching time as well, we had 2 views: put the membership up, reduce the membership. Both are valid. Reducing the membership tends to boost numbers, as long as you've got a marketing campaign behind it to bring more in. Putting up the membership can give you a short-term cash flow boost, but can sometimes reduce the membership, and it's a net difference.
Or it gives a value to it.
Or it gives a value to it. Well, the value to the membership is the one that I think most clubs get wrong. Without being specific, who is charging for basic participation, kids coming along, under £2 a session per week? Yep. Who's under £5 a session per week? Anyone over £10 a week? No? Okay. We charge £1 a week. And that gives you 2.5 hours on a Monday night and potentially another session during the week. Now, that was a conscious decision on our part. We live in rural Perthshire. Folk have got to get there, so there's expenses and things like that. The membership fee itself is not very high, but that's because we just want lots of people coming in. We'll raise the money elsewhere. But if you're in a situation that you want to value that, if you're in the £2 a night, which is £1 an hour, how does that equate for the parent in terms of childcare? Brilliant value. Here they are. That's great. So you've got to assess that and say, what is the value of what we're doing? Now, we looked at that and said, actually, we could charge a lot more. We're a successful club, people want to be here, we could charge a lot more. But actually, you know what, we don't want to do that. Because you never know what, they might have been at swimming beforehand. And tomorrow night they might have tennis. And the week after, and on Wednesday night, they might be at horse riding. And on Thursday night they might have school stuff or they've got hockey. And you know what, before you know where you are, that parent's forking out 30 quid a week. And all sorts of things. And at the end of the day, if cricket isn't their key sport, you know what, it's the one that gets dumped because they want to do the other ones that are more expensive. So you've always got that balance right, but you've got to understand the value. Is there anyone that has different membership charges depending on your level of ability? You not at the back? No? Okay. You have got your participative people coming in. So you've got the great mass coming in who want to get involved in athletics because they saw it on the telly, they want to have a go, they may or may not want to progress, they just want to be there because their pals are there and they want to get involved. Fantastic. Then you pick up the one that runs around, really enjoys it and is actually quite good and talks to the coach and says, this is actually quite good, I quite like this. And you say, well, we think you should get involved in an area or whatever the next step is. And they say, well, I'd like to do that. They get involved and start being quite successful and they start winning it. Should they still be paying £1 to come along and do it? They've now got access to one-to-one with a coach. Would the parent put a higher value on it if you turn around and said, actually, do you know what, we've just had a look at wee Johnny stroke Jeannie. Do you know what, they've got potential. We think we can get them into area and they could be really good, but what we really need to do is to move them out of that group. They can still come on a Monday night or whatever and play with their pals and do whatever, but actually we'd like to do a dedicated work with them with a smaller group and get them involved to move forward and work with them. We want to work on their general fitness, we want to work on whatever is right in athletics. And they will actually be at a higher level of membership because you get a much higher level that's coming in. The thing on that one is it is going to be £5 a week to do that because you're getting access to the coaches.
In some cases it's number of sessions they're attending, because there are guys that pay
Yeah.
to get into a facility each
Yeah.
time, so £2 odd
Yeah.
time to come in.
But is there value in it? Sorry?
You go back to ethos then.
Yep.
I mean, so if you've got an athlete, and I'm going to be guessing that,
Yeah.
there's a lot of coaches in the room who have athletes who are knocking on that door,
Yeah.
I mean, where they can go to Scottish Athletics funding and
Yeah.
on UK funding.
Yeah.
But I would suggest until they get there, of which there is very few, I mean, the club structure and your ethos on what you're going to do with that individual, because we have very, very good athletes in Scotland
Yeah.
that are still below the threshold for gaining funding elsewhere.
Yeah. This is not them gaining the funding. This is actually the value proposition to the parent.
I think the other side of that is you have a lot of athletes, I don't know about anybody else, but we have a lot of youngsters coming through who are actually couldn't afford that. So being fair to all is probably what we do, and we charge enough to cover our costs of going back to your income thing. We cover the cost of paying for the facility.
Yep.
And if we have more than 18, 20 kids, that's profit to us.
Yeah.
But below that, we fund it.
Yeah.
And that's what the ethos I'm looking at, is that we need to make sure that kids have access,
Yeah.
whatever the background status.
Yeah.
In your scenario, you could have a kid who's very, very good, but his parents couldn't afford the extra money.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts to get
We're not
difficult for me.
proposing that you do this. What we're saying is these are thought processes you might want to go through.
The ethos quite often tends to be the mass participation at the low end helps subsidise the
Yeah.
That's
more
right.
at the top.
And that's fine if that's the ethos you've got there. If you're a club that really works on things and says, actually, we're looking at performance, maybe it's a different costing structure. From your point of view, the events is a different way of doing it. So if you then have to find an extra load of money, you're not going to do it through the memberships. We wouldn't do it through the memberships. But it doesn't mean to say you don't think about these things and look at the way they work. Do you have social members?
We have, yeah, but yeah, they do pay less, but we
They
charge-
pay less. We charge them more.
All right, okay, never thought.
Winston, I think it would be a really interesting discussion with your local swimming club about their fund membership fee structure in the same geographical area, drawing upon the same demographics.
Yeah.
Because I listened recently with Mark to a presentation by Swimming and was astonished by the costs involved.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Nigel, because
And it is very interesting, but they're drawing on the same demographics as all our clubs.
But a lot of the, almost every athletics club I know charges is the least expensive in any area. And that's part of the issue as well, is where do we pitch it to make sure we're not excluding people.
It's about understanding the value.
Yeah, that's it for me. It's the value, because the money you get in for the membership, it's what do those people bring to the party. You know, you might have people in there that can help you raise more money. And if you charge somebody £2 to come and join your club, and they bring in £10,000 because they had a really good idea for it's insignificant the money that you charge for them, and that's for the value that your members bring. Because we've got members who we ask all of our members what they're prepared to help us with. So fundraising, coaching, grounds work, all of these different areas. The value, if we can get enough people to help with grounds work, we don't have to bring somebody in. We don't have to do this. We don't, and it's the value that's associated with that. So this is where coming in here, you need to make sure that whatever you charge is sustainable within the area that you're in. There's no point in trying to put it up when it doesn't work. If it comes back to the ethos, the club structure doesn't support it, it's for all, then don't do it, because it will start to destroy what you've built. If you're running an elite program, then yeah, maybe you can do that. Maybe you can act as a feeder, so the parents end up not paying you more, but move to another club. But there's ways that that again comes in with the partnership.
See an exceptional athlete in our club, what it will give them is more access to athlete funding from within. Because you're talking about value, we would reverse the value and understand the value of the athlete to us.
Yeah.
Therefore, we wouldn't be considering asking him for more. We in fact, through the money we generate, we would be giving him more access to more funding to make him an even better athlete.
Is that common in other clubs as well then?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and doing it that way. So the more successful they become, they actually help bring in more for you. Perfect.
Subsidise the elite athletes.
Well, again, that's about the ethos of the club. It's very much, we don't have a split structure, and we just work on, and have done since we started, £8 a week. And that's the way we've worked, and that's our ethos. We share that part. But it doesn't mean to say you don't explore other ideas, particularly if you've got to increase your revenue.
And that's just a different value view of the member. And that's how it comes in. So this is a game where we come back around to looking at the value that these people bring in to your organisation. All the organisations in here are going to be different. We're different to a lot of cricket clubs. And it's about finding through this and through these what works for you in the areas that you're in.
I think what you're saying is don't close your mind to what you can do.
I think it's not even don't close your mind, it's completely open your mind. You're running a business.
Yeah.
And what you've got to do is start looking at it. First of all, you've got to understand your cost structure. You need to really understand how much it costs you to run the club. And you need to be able to predict your income. And unfortunately for a lot of clubs, we see it within the small cricket clubs, those that work on the basis of if we get a grant we'll be okay this year are heading for trouble. You cannot rely on getting grants to keep you going. You have to actually do the hard sitting down. You have to do this. Who are you? Set your goals, what is you're trying to do. If you need help, talk to the people that are there to help you. Share your plan and get more people involved so that you can get more ideas coming in on how to do it, and actually then go out and do it. That's why this is so important for everything we talk about.
One of the things you said about trying to transfer your costs, and people were talking about the charges for venues. In Aberdeen, most of our use is not at the cost of the venue, but we don't hire venue, trying to avoid hiring venues at all, because we tell them it's in their interest to fill their space. And okay, they get the gate receipt as well, the kids, but wherever possible, we try not to pay for venue hire, because actually it's their performance indicators. It's a trust.
Well, exactly. They actually have to get the throughput.
50,000 people through.
Yeah, they need that throughput because that for there is more valuable. Okay, I'm conscious of the fact we've gone past 9:30. I'm happy to carry on.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yep.
If people have got individual discussion topics, they collar you in just a minute.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm conscious that some people threaten to leave at 9 and they've obviously
Thank you very much.
perceived sufficient value that they haven't run out the door yet. So, look, to let people run out the door, just as you do, first, start off with thanks, first of all, to John and Nancy. I hope that's been good value. I hope it's sparked off thinking. I hope it's raised a few ideas. That was part of tonight. There's no right or wrong answers. I think that's very clear. It's been fascinating for me to listen to a different sport, cricket. It brought back memories of my days as a specialist number 9 batsman. So if I am ever cycling past and you're struggling, stand by. You'll be horrified by what you see.
What are you doing Sunday?
But look, I just want to say a huge thank you to you both. Thank you very much indeed, and I do hope that you've enjoyed the evening as well, because I've certainly enjoyed it above all else. Just a couple of quick key things for everybody here from an athletics perspective, I suppose. I'm not going to do any big wrap up now. That's not right. Time's not on our side. Club Together. Some of you are Club Together clubs. We've just signed a sponsor for the Club Together programme, the NVT Group. we've got some income coming in for that. We're planning on using that income very much to follow up this kind of evening on a one-to-one club basis for those clubs that are interested. Okay, because we'd actually like to take, this isn't about a one-off, this is the start of a journey together, collectively, to see what avenues we can explore. So there's the follow-up on the gift aid, which we couldn't do tonight, and we'll make that happen as soon as that's viable later on this summer. And stand by if it's appropriate, and if you're interested, and there's no pressure, but if you're interested in a one-on-one club follow-up where we bring some expertise to your club, to your committee, to continue this kind of dialogue on a one-on-one basis, okay? Very conscious that tonight was about fundraising and money, but it was also about these building blocks, and without those building blocks, and thank you for running through that, there's no point in almost tackling the fundraising bit to me. What stood out for me that I'm very passionate about, when we got into the fundraising component, you came to life, the two, you've been pretty lively all night, but you came to life when you were starting to talk about events that were non-cricket. And the key to me for that is actually the social side I suspect the club gets out of that, and you get as individuals and your club members get out of it. And if there's one plea I make to everybody in sport, it's don't forget the social side of sport. There's an awful lot of research around that says most people do sport not because of wanting to be a champion, not because of wanting to be fit, not because of wanting to be a winner. They do it to meet people and to enjoy a social time with their mates. And my 11-year-old son, who runs for Central and is doing the primary school cross-country championships tomorrow, if I ask him why he goes to athletics on a Tuesday night, it's to see his mates. It isn't anything other than that. And I think there's a key message in that actually it sounds like you're having an awful lot of fun as a club that's not specific to cricket the whole time, but that actually brings that community that is the club together as a group of friends. So I'd really respect that, and I wouldn't want anybody to lose sight of that, because to me that's one of the key components as a sport we've got to really think about, because that I think is where society is going in a big way. What I suggest we do, rather than take any feedback now, we'll, through Mark, ping something out by email or dreaded, maybe even tweet it, but we might actually just do a little survey or something like that, because we'd love some feedback as to how you found tonight in terms of how useful it is, what other areas we could potentially cover in future. Two last ones then. As you leave, collar these guys individually on the way out, okay, if you've got any queries. Could you take your cups and saucers out with you, because I think otherwise we're going to be here for hours clearing up. And above all else, John, Anthony, thank you very much.